Tonight, former President Trump in battleground Georgia.
I think it's going to be the most important election in the history of our country.
It comes after Trump's massive rally, packing Madison Square Garden in deep blue New York City, the start of his closing argument. The Trump campaign facing bipartisan backlash over racist comments from a comedian who spoke earlier, including this about Puerto Rico.
I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay, all right, okay, we're getting there.
Trump's campaign distancing itself, saying, quote, "This joke does not reflect the views of President Trump or the campaign." Today, Republicans blasting the comedian's comment too, including Congresswoman Maria Salazar calling it disgusting, saying it does not reflect GOP values. Florida Senator Rick Scott saying it's not funny and it's not true. And now, Vice President Harris going after Trump.
It is absolutely something that is intended to and is fanning the fuel of trying to divide our country.
Today responding.
I haven't seen the joke. I'm not going to comment on the specifics of the joke, but I think that we have to stop getting so offended at every little thing in the United States of America. I'm so over it.
Today to Puerto Rico about Trump.
He abandoned the island, tried to block aid after back-to-back devastating hurricanes.
On Tuesday, Biden referred to Trump supporters as garbage when responding to the Republicans' weekend rally in New York and a comedian's controversial comment about Puerto Rico.
Donald Trump has no character. He doesn't give a damn about the Latino community. He's failed businessman. He only cares about the billionaire friends he has and accumulating wealth for those at the top. You know, he says immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. Give me a break. He wants to do away with the birthright citizenship. Who the hell has said that in the last 100 years? And just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. Well, let me tell you something. I don't know the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable. And it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done, everything we've been.
The U.S. president later clarified his remarks, saying it was about rhetoric espoused by Trump's campaign.
I think that, first of all, he clarified his comments, but let me be clear, I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for. You heard my speech last night and continuously throughout my career. I believe that the work that I do is about representing all the people, whether they support me or not.
When hateful rhetoric is being said, the president believes it's important to speak to it and call that out. And that's what the president was referring to, a comedian, a particular comedian from just Saturday night. You all covered this at Madison Square Garden, who was spewing hate against the Puerto Rican community, and the president felt that he needed to say something. At the same time, he wanted to make sure that his words were not taken out of context, and so he himself wanted to make sure that a statement was put out to clarify. And I would say I think it's really important that you have a president that cares about clarifying what they said. And that's what you see from this president. He took it upon himself to clarify what he said. And I think that says a lot about who Joe Biden is.
Joe Biden finally said what he and Kamala really think of our supporters. He called them garbage. And they mean it. Even though, without question, my supporters are far higher quality than Crooked Joe or Lion Kamala. My response to Joe and Kamala is very simple. You can't lead America if you don't love Americans. You just and you can't be president if you hate the American people, and there's a lot of hatred there. Kamala Harris is not fit to be president of the United States.
about the secret relationship Trump has been carrying on with Vladimir Putin. One that we now know tonight includes as many as 7 private phone calls since Trump left office. Another revelation tonight is a bit bizarre, and that is that Trump sent Putin individual COVID tests at the height of COVID. Now, according to legendary journalist Bob Woodward's new book, those tests were sent to Putin during the height of the pandemic in 2020, right? When gosh, nobody could get a hold of tests. Now, during a call at the time, Putin tells Trump, quote, "Please don't tell anybody you sent these to me." And Trump replies, and Woodward's the one putting quotes around this, "I don't care, fine." Putin says, no, I don't want you to tell anybody because people will get mad at you, not me. They don't care about me. Now, Trump sending Putin personal COVID tests is at the least fascinating. I mean, how did they get to Putin? Who knew about them? Did Trump send them to other world leaders, or was this just special for Putin? And then did Putin really use COVID tests sent from America, putting his DNA on them? I mean, what was this about? Well, today, Vice President Kamala Harris had this to say about it.
In the height of the pandemic, and remember, and your listeners will remember, people were dying by the hundreds.
Yeah.
Everybody was scrambling to get these kits, the tests, the COVID test kits.
Couldn't get them.
Couldn't get them.
Right.
Couldn't get them anywhere.
Right.
And this guy who is president of the United States is sending them to Russia, to a murderous dictator for his personal use? You're getting played. And some would say, look, I grew up in the neighborhood. Some would say you're getting punked.
Yeah.
If you stand in favor of somebody who's an adversary over your friends on principles that we all agree on.
Now, the Trump campaign responding to these claims in an angry fashion. Let me just read part of the statement. "None of these made-up stories by Bob Woodward are true and are the work of a truly demented and deranged man who suffers from a debilitating case of Trump derangement syndrome." Woodward is an angry little man and is clearly upset because President Trump is successfully suing him because of the unauthorized publishing of recordings he made previously. There's just a little taste of the statement. Now, CNN presidential historian Tim Naftali, who, of course, has been the head of the Nixon Library, tells out front that former presidents talking to adversaries, actually, that may not be new in concept, but there is no record from Woodward's reporting that a really crucial thing happened, which is that a single person in the intelligence or national security communities knew about Trump and Putin's calls. In fact, the New York Times reporting tonight, of the 19 officials that they spoke to, not one was told about these calls. So that's crucial, and context always matters here. Trump's desire to be close to Putin is important, his admiration for him is important, and his clear support of Putin's view on Ukraine, as just one example, opens the door to something deeply serious. A former president talking with a sitting world leader in secret, contradicting U.S. government policy. So let's just take Ukraine, and what Trump has said publicly tells us a lot.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions.
Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal.
Negotiate a deal. That's exactly what Putin says he wants.
I already said that we did not refuse to talk. We're willing to negotiate.
I mean, that's the policy of Putin, echoed by Trump. A deal where he gets Ukrainian land, and eventually, of course, much, if not all, of the largest country in Europe. But Trump's support of Putin on this existential issue for the Russian dictator is noticed in Russia, where state media portrays Donald Trump as a Vladimir Putin acolyte.
Trump is planning to end the war in 24 hours. This scheme suits us well.
This scheme suits us well. She says it. It sure does. And it also does not come out of the blue. For years, Trump, of course, has had glowing things to say about Putin.
I also have a very good relationship, as you know, with President Putin. I knew Putin very well. I got along with him actually great. Putin is a nicer person than I am. So now I like Putin. Now, Putin called me a genius, by the way.
Of course, the genius in this relationship may be Putin, who has maintained a direct relationship with a former president against U.S. protocol. All right, everyone's with me here. Let me start with Jeremy Herb. You have read this book, so you know all the detail in it, all the new reporting from the legendary Bob Woodward here. What more does he say about Trump's relationship with Putin?
You know what's fascinating when you pour through the book and read it is just how much Bob Woodward really brings you inside the room of these conversations that Donald Trump's had with Putin, also President Biden has had. He says that this is based on interviews with firsthand participants, people who were in the room listening, and documents. So that's what he is basing it on. When you have this transcript that is effectively
he put quotes around it.
He put quotes around it. He doesn't put quotes around everything, but he put quotes around this where Putin tells Trump, please don't tell anyone you sent these to me. And then when you get to the calls, he says that an aide told him there may be as many as 7 calls. But he also has a scene there where the aide is sent out of the room. He says Trump sent this aide out of the rooms and told the aide, I'm having a private call with Putin. And so it gets you just a little bit more of a glimpse. Obviously, as you just laid out, there's a ton of context around Trump's relationship with Putin, but it gives us just that much more of a sense of really what he is thinking as he has these conversations.
Right, private conversations, having everyone leave the room. Again, we don't know what was said, but it's highly unusual. Let's just put it that way to say at the very least, and then you put the context around it. And Lulu, so that
the other stuff is bizarre, as president, sending Putin the COVID kit, but it doesn't seem to threaten U.S. interests. This is really appalling. I mean, presumably some of these conversations, maybe all of them happened after Putin invaded Ukraine, after we had sanctions against Russia. Trump is sitting there having private conversations with Putin, who we are doing our best to defeat in Ukraine. Who knows what they're saying? He kicks his aide out of the room. Is he giving Putin advice on how to deal with the Republican Party and how to make a good case for himself here in America? Is Putin giving him, Trump, advice? Is Putin giving Trump instructions? Is Putin promising Trump certain things? If Trump rallies the Republicans to be not pro-Ukraine and instead pro-Putin, Trump's sitting at Mar-a-Lago. There's no national security official on the phone there, where there would be, presumably most of the time at least, if you're actually sitting in the White House and if you're president. There's no record of it at all. Trump's sitting with all these classified documents he took to Mar-a-Lago. Yeah. We really, the degree of not just irresponsibility, but possible really terrible behavior and damage to the interests of the United States here, it's really extraordinary.
Right. You point out, sitting there with all that, the classified information that he had with him at Mar-a-Lago that we now know. I mean, Jeremy, Woodward also, just the context here to remind everybody of the seriousness of the situation with Putin. But when I mentioned the nukes, that he is reporting that the U.S. government had assessed that there was a 50% chance that Putin could actually use a nuclear weapon regarding the Ukraine war. I mean, what more did you learn about that? Yeah,
obviously the quotes in this book are fascinating, but some of the really most interesting details I think Woodward has is just how much the White House was concerned that Putin actually might use nukes. Woodward reports on a call that happened before the war where he calls it a hot 50-minute call that Biden had with Putin, where at one point Putin mentioned using nuclear weapons in a threatening way, and Biden had to remind him, no one wins a nuclear war. And you fast forward about 6 months into the war, in September of 2022, that's when this 50% intelligence assessment comes in. And the Biden White House went into overdrive to try to cut it off. They were concerned that they were going to make up a story about a dirty bomb. And we knew that publicly. But what the book shows us is what they did. They had Austin go to his counterpart. General Milley went to his counterpart. And Biden went to his other world leaders and tried to get them to walk Putin back off that ledge.
And now Trump may have, we don't know the dates, may have had a conversation. We don't know what he said. I mean, just puts the exclamation point on how crucial this is.